The wine glass shattered against the marble floor, and silence swallowed the room whole. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward the young black woman in the crisp white blouse, her trembling hands still suspended in the air where the Chateau Margaux had slipped from her grasp. Red wine pooled around her worn black shoes like blood from an invisible wound. But she wasn't looking at the mess. She was looking at him. Raffaello Montecorvo sat at the center table, his silver suit catching the chandelier light, his face twisted into something between amusement and disgust. He dabbed his napkin against a single crimson drop that had dared to land on his cuff, and when he spoke, his voice carried the quiet confidence of a man who had never been told no. "Tell me something, sweetheart." He leaned back in his chair, letting his eyes travel over her with the slow cruelty of someone examining an insect. "Did they hire you for charity? Because they certainly didn't hire you for your looks." Nervous laughter rippled through his entourage. 5 men in tailored suits, their smiles predatory, their loyalty bought with blood money and broken bones. The restaurant owner, Vittorio Cassano, stood frozen by the kitchen door, his face pale as fresh pasta dough. The woman, her name tag read Solène, kept her expression neutral. But if you looked closely, if you truly paid attention, you would see something flash behind those dark brown eyes. Something that didn't belong on the face of a frightened waitress. Something dangerous. "I'm terribly sorry, sir," she said, her voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "I'll have this cleaned immediately." But Raffaello wasn't finished. Men like him never were. "Sorry?" He pushed back from the table, rising to his full 6'2" height, and stepped toward her with the slow deliberation of a predator cornering prey. "You think sorry covers a $3,000 bottle of wine spilled by an ugly little nobody?" The word hung in the air. Ugly. He said it loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. Loud enough for the elderly couple in the corner to look away in embarrassment. Loud enough for the young women at the bar to exchange uncomfortable glances. Solène didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't breathe. "You know what you are," Raffaello continued, close enough now that she could smell the wine on his breath, the expensive cologne on his skin, the rot beneath the polish. "You're nothing. Less than nothing. You're the kind of woman men walk past on the street without even seeing. And now you've ruined my evening with your clumsy, pathetic Raffaello." The voice came from the back of the restaurant, and it stopped the Mafia boss mid-sentence. An older man with silver hair and cold blue eyes rose from a shadowed booth. Benedetto Falcone. Benny to those who knew him, though few dared speak his name casually. He was Raffaello's underboss, his most trusted advisor, the quiet knife to Raffaello's loud gun. "She's just a waitress," Benny said, his tone bored. "Let it go. We have business." For a long moment, Raffaello held Solène's gaze, and the hatred in his eyes was pure, undiluted. Then he snorted, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a $100 bill. He let it fall, watched it flutter and land in the puddle of wine at her feet. "For your trouble," he said with a mocking smile. "Buy yourself a new face." More laughter from his crew. More silence from everyone else. Solène Baptiste bent down slowly, her back straight, her movements deliberate. She picked up the soaked bill, folded it carefully, and tucked it into her apron pocket. Then she looked up at Raffaello Montecorvo, this man who controlled half the city's underbelly, who had ordered the deaths of judges and journalists, who believed himself untouchable by God or man. And she smiled. Just a small smile. Just a hint of teeth. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "I'll never forget your generosity." Something in her voice made his smile falter for just a fraction of a second. Something he couldn't name, couldn't place, couldn't understand. Then the moment passed and he turned away, returning to his table and his business and his kingdom of shadows. He didn't see the waitress watch him go, didn't see the way her fingers brushed against the inside of her collar where a tiny microphone lay hidden against her skin, didn't see her lips move in a whisper meant for someone far away. Target confirmed. Recording secured. Moving to phase 2. Now, before we dive deeper into this story, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from. Wherever you are in this world, let me know. I want to see how far this story travels. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next in this story, you won't find it anywhere else. Trust me when I say you'll want to see how this ends. Subscribe now and let's continue. 3 years earlier, in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of New Orleans, a young woman named Solène Baptiste held her grandmother's hand and watched the strongest person she'd ever known fade away. Marguerite Baptiste was 76 years old and she was dying. Not from age, not from illness, from a bullet that had been meant for someone else, fired by a man who would never face consequences, on orders from people who believed Black lives came cheap. The Montecorvo family had wanted the Baptiste family property, 3 generations of memories, a 2-story house with a wraparound porch, the only thing of value Marguerite had ever owned. She'd refused to sell, refused the threats, refused the bribes. And so, one autumn evening, a black SUV had rolled past her garden while she was watering her roses, and a faceless shooter had taken everything. The police called it random gang violence. Case closed. No leads, no arrests, no justice. But Solène knew better. Solène had seen the SUV before, parked outside the Italian restaurant on Bourbon Street, where men in expensive suits conducted meetings that never appeared on any calendar. She had watched. She had waited. She had remembered. And then she had made a choice. "Baby girl." Marguerite's voice was barely a whisper, her grip weak as a sparrow's wing. "Promise me something." "Anything, Grandma." Solène's tears fell freely now, pooling on the starched hospital sheets. "Don't let hate make you hard. Don't let them take your softness." Marguerite's eyes, still sharp despite the morphine, found her granddaughter's face. "But don't you ever let them take your power either. You understand me?" Solène nodded, unable to speak. "You're beautiful, child. More beautiful than they'll ever see. Because real beauty isn't in the skin, it's in the spirit. It's in the fight. It's in refusing to bow to small men with loud voices." Marguerite squeezed her hand one final time. "Show them who you are, Solène. Show them what they're too blind to see." She died at 3:47 in the morning, and something in Solène died with her. But something else was born in the darkness of that hospital room, something forged in grief and sharpened by purpose. The FBI Academy doesn't accept broken people. It accepts people who have reconstructed themselves from broken pieces, people who have taken their pain and transformed it into precision. Solène Baptiste graduated top of her class in marksmanship, second in hand-to-hand combat, and first in undercover operations. Her instructors said she had a gift for disappearing, for becoming someone else so completely that even she sometimes forgot who she really was. They didn't know that she'd been practicing her whole life, practicing being invisible in a world that wanted to overlook her, practicing smiling when everything inside her screamed, practicing patience when every fiber of her being demanded action. She requested the Montecorvo case personally. Her supervising agent, a steely woman named Talia Vance, had looked at her across a conference table covered in photographs of dead informants and missing witnesses. "You know the risks," Agent Vance said. "This family has been operating for 40 years. They've buried every case we've ever brought. They have judges, prosecutors, city council members. They have the kind of money that makes evidence disappear." "I know," Solène replied. "If they discover who you are, there won't be a body to find. They'll scatter your pieces across 3 states. "I know." Agent Vance studied her for a long moment. "You have a personal connection to this case. Don't lie to me. I've read your file. Your grandmother's death, the property dispute, the convenient timing." Solène didn't look away. "That's exactly why I'll succeed where others have failed. They'll never suspect me. To men like Raffaello Montecorvo, I'm invisible. I'm just an ugly little nobody. Remember?" She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "And that's exactly what I want them to think." The undercover operation was approved 3 weeks later. Solène Baptiste became Solène Robinson. Same first name, because covers work best when they're close to truth. A struggling single mother who needed work and didn't ask questions. She applied for a waitressing job at Cassano's, the upscale restaurant that served as Raffaello's unofficial office. And she waited. For 18 months, she was nothing but the perfect employee. Always on time, always polite, always forgettable. She memorized faces, cataloged conversations, mapped the invisible hierarchies of power that flowed through the restaurant like underground rivers. She learned which booth Raffaello preferred. Number 7, in the back, with clear sightlines to both exits. Which wine he drank when celebrating. Chateau Margaux. The same wine she would one day spill at his feet. And which of his men could be turned. Benedetto Falcone, whose brother had been killed on Raffaello's orders for asking too many questions about the books. She learned everything. And she waited for her moment. Tonight, the moment had arrived. As she cleaned the wine from the floor, as Raffaello's mocking laughter echoed in her ears, Solène Baptiste allowed herself a single thought. It rose, unbidden, from somewhere deep, from that small apartment in New Orleans, from her grandmother's final breath. "Show them who you are." She intended to, and when she was finished, Raffaello Montecorvo would learn a lesson that men like him never seem to understand. The people you dismiss as nothing are often the most dangerous people of all. The staff bathroom at Cassano's was barely larger than a closet, with a flickering fluorescent light and a mirror spotted with age. Solène locked the door behind her and exhaled slowly, letting the mask slip for just a moment. Her reflection stared back. High cheekbones that echoed her Haitian grandmother, dark skin that glowed even under the harsh light, eyes that held secrets within secrets. Ugly, he had called her. Less than nothing. She traced her fingers along her jawline, remembering a different voice, a warmer voice, telling her she was beautiful. Her grandmother had been right. Real beauty was something they couldn't touch. Real power was something they couldn't see. She pulled the tiny earpiece from beneath her collar and pressed it deeper into her ear canal. It was virtually undetectable, flesh-colored, molded to the contours of her ear. But in moments like this, she needed to hear confirmation that she wasn't alone. "You good?" Agent Vance's voice crackled through the connection, concern barely masked by professionalism. "I'm good," Solène whispered. "Recording captured cleanly. We got him on digital. Verbal assault, harassment. Small potatoes, but it keeps him talking. He's comfortable here, getting careless." That verbal assault was personal, Solène. Are you sure? I'm sure. She cut off the question before it could fully form. His confidence is our weapon. Every time he dismisses me, every time he looks through me like I'm not there, he proves exactly how blind he is. Let him underestimate me. It makes everything easier. A pause on the line. Then, Benedetto made contact this afternoon. He wants a meeting. Off-site, tomorrow night. Solène's heart rate increased slightly, the only sign of the adrenaline that suddenly flooded her system. Benedetto Falcone had been her long game, her patience project. For a year she had been building trust with the underboss through subtle signals, encrypted messages left in dead drops, and one carefully orchestrated conversation in a back alley when she'd, accidentally, witnessed him disposing of evidence. She had given him a choice that night: work with the FBI or face prosecution for the 3 murders they could already prove. He had chosen survival, as she'd known he would. But turning him into an active asset required more than leverage. It required trust. It required making him believe she could deliver the one thing he wanted most: revenge. Time and location? Solène asked. 10 p.m. The old warehouse on Decker Street. The one the family used to use for storage before they moved to the new facility. I'll be there. So then, Agent Vance's voice softened, just slightly. We're closer than we've ever been. 18 months of work coming together. But if you need to pull back after tonight, after what he said... What he said was a gift, Solène interrupted. He showed his true face in front of witnesses. He showed his men how he treats people he considers beneath him. And most importantly, he showed me that he has no idea who he's dealing with. She smiled at her reflection. That's not something that hurts me. That's something I can use. She ended the transmission and spent a moment recomposing herself, tucking away the hard edges, summoning the softness that made her invisible. When she opened the bathroom door, she was once again simply Solène Robinson, the waitress who needed this job, the woman who swallowed insults because she had no other choice. The restaurant was quieter now. Raffaello's group had moved from dinner to drinks, their voices lower, their body language more intense. Business, not pleasure. Solène moved through the room like a shadow, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, and listening. Always listening. The shipment arrives Thursday, one of the men was saying. Puerto Vallarta route. Customs is already handled. We have a new guy on the inside. Verification? Raffaello's voice was sharp. Moreno vouched for him. Solid references. Solène tucked this information away, filing it alongside 1,000 other fragments that would eventually form a complete picture. The Thursday shipment. Probably drugs, possibly weapons. The customs contact, the Moreno connection. Each piece was a thread, and she was weaving them into a net. She was pouring coffee for the elderly couple in the corner. They came every Tuesday, always ordered the same meal, always tipped generously, when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Not her official phone, but the burner she used for personal contacts. Only one person had this number. The message was brief. Need to see you. Urgent. Ezekiel Hartwell. Zeke. The one complication in her carefully constructed life. She had met him by accident, truly by accident, at a jazz club on Frenchman Street 8 months ago. He was a defense attorney with a reputation for taking cases no one else would touch. Immigrant families facing deportation, teenagers charged as adults, victims of police brutality. He had strong hands and gentle eyes, and a laugh that made her forget, for just a moment, who she was pretending to be. She had tried to stay away. The mission demanded isolation, demanded focus, demanded that she keep everyone at arm's length. But Zeke had been persistent in his quiet way, never pushing, never demanding, simply showing up at the edges of her life until she'd stopped trying to push him away. He didn't know what she really did. He thought she was exactly what she appeared to be, a struggling waitress with dreams of going back to school, a woman with a sad past and uncertain future. The lie weighed on her more heavily with each passing month, especially on the nights when he held her, and she wanted nothing more than to tell him everything. But telling him everything would put him in danger, and she had already lost too many people she loved. She texted back a single word: midnight. Then she slipped the phone away and returned to her work, to her mask, to the performance that had become her entire existence. The hours crawled past. Raffaello and his men lingered until nearly 11, their conversation growing more animated as the wine flowed. Solène caught fragments, territory disputes, a problem with someone named Cavallo, plans for an event called the Venetian Gala, and stored each one in the mental catalog she would later transcribe for Agent Vance. Finally, mercifully, they left. Raffaello didn't look at her as he passed, didn't acknowledge her existence at all. That was fine, better than fine. Every moment of invisibility was another moment to prepare. She helped close the restaurant, counting her meager tips, exchanging tired pleasantries with Darian, the other waitress on shift. Darian was 19, ambitious, with no idea that she worked alongside a federal agent. She wanted to be an actress, and she practiced her monologues in the break room between shifts. "That guy tonight," Darian said as they walked out together. "The one who yelled at you. I'm so sorry, Solène. Some people are just garbage." "It's fine." Solène managed a small smile. "I've dealt with worse." "Still, you didn't deserve that." Darian squeezed her arm with genuine warmth. "You know you're beautiful, right? Like, actually beautiful? Whatever that jerk said doesn't matter." The words hit Solène harder than she expected. She had to look away to hide the sudden moisture in her eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means more than you know." They parted ways at the corner, and Solène walked 3 blocks to the coffee shop where Zeke was waiting. He sat at their usual table by the window, a cup of cold coffee in front of him, worry etched into every line of his face. "You're late," he said as she slid into the seat across from him. "Rough night at work." "I heard." His jaw tightened. "Darian texted me. She told me what that man said to you." Of course she had. Darian and Zeke had met at a gallery opening last month, and they'd become friends in the easy way that normal people made friends. Normal people who weren't living lies. "Zeke." "I looked him up, Solène. Raffaello Montecorvo. Do you know who he is? Do you know what kind of people you're working around?" His voice was low, urgent, his hand reaching across the table to grip hers. "He's connected to organized crime. Serious organized crime. The kind with bodies attached. You need to quit that job. Tonight. Right now." Here's a question I want you to think about. Let me know your answer in the comments. When someone you love is trying to protect you from a truth they don't fully understand, is it better to push them away for their safety, or to bring them closer despite the risk? What would you do if you were Solène right now? Tell me in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious what you think. Solène looked at the man across from her, this good man, this caring man, this man who had somehow seen past her carefully constructed walls, and she felt the familiar war inside her chest, the part of her that wanted to tell him everything, fighting against the part that knew the cost of such honesty. "I can take care of myself," she said softly. "Can you?" His grip on her hand tightened. "Because the look in your eyes tonight, it's different. Something's happening, Solène. Something you're not telling me, and I need you to trust me. I need you to let me help. You can't help with this." "Why not?" "Because if you knew the truth, You'd either run or stay, and I don't know which would be worse. The thought surfaced unbidden, and she pushed it away. Because some things I have to do alone, she said. Because the woman you think you know. She stopped, catching herself before she said too much. Just trust me, Zeke. In a few weeks, everything is going to change. And when it does, I promise I'll explain everything. He studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers for answers she couldn't give. A few weeks? Maybe less. And then you'll tell me the truth? All of it? She nodded, and for the first time in 18 months, she meant it. The operation was reaching its climax. One way or another, this would all be over soon. Either she would bring down Raffaello Montecorvo and finally step back into her own life, or she would disappear into the same silence that had swallowed her grandmother. Either way, the pretending would be over. I love you, Zeke said suddenly. I know we haven't. I know it's complicated, but I love you. And whatever you're involved in, whatever you're hiding, that doesn't change. Do you understand? Solène Baptiste. Not Solène Robinson, not the waitress, not the mask. Let herself be seen for just a moment. Let him see the real woman beneath the performance. I love you too, she whispered. And that's exactly why you need to stay away for the next 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, no visits. Trust me enough to disappear until I come find you. He didn't argue, didn't push. He simply nodded, leaned across the table, and kissed her like he was memorizing the taste of her lips. When they finally parted, she walked alone into the night, her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. Show them who you are. Tomorrow night, with Benedetto Falcone, the next phase would begin, and Raffaello Montecorvo would take another step toward an unthinkable end he couldn't yet imagine. The warehouse on Decker Street smelled of rust and forgotten things. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, casting silver pools on the concrete floor where rats had made their kingdom among overturned crates and abandoned machinery. Solène arrived 15 minutes early, standard protocol. She checked every entrance, every shadow, every possible ambush point. Her weapon, a compact Glock 43 that fit perfectly against her ankle, was a familiar weight beneath her jeans. She didn't expect trouble tonight, but expecting trouble and preparing for it were two different disciplines. Benedetto Falcone appeared at exactly 10 o'clock, punctual as always. He moved like a ghost, despite his bulk, decades of survival instinct making him nearly silent. His blue eyes scanned the warehouse with the same professional paranoia that Solène herself practiced. You came alone, he said, not a question. Always, same as you. He nodded, satisfied, and crossed to where she stood beside a forgotten conveyor belt. Up close, he looked older than his 62 years, his face carved by grief and guilt and the particular exhaustion that came from serving evil men. My brother would have been 58 this year, he said without preamble. Giuseppe. He made the best linguine in the city, did you know that? Better than any restaurant. Better than our mother's, though we never told her. A sad smile crossed his face. He was a good man. Too good for this family. Too honest for this life. Is that why Raffaello killed him? Giuseppe asked questions about the books, about money going to places it shouldn't, about children. Benedetto stopped, swallowed hard. He found something he wasn't supposed to find. A trafficking operation. Not drugs. People. Young people. His voice cracked. He tried to stop it, tried to go to the authorities. And Raffaello called it handling the situation. Solène felt the cold rage that lived beneath her calm surface stir at his words. Trafficking. Children. Every day she spent in this undercover role, she uncovered new layers of horror. Every day, her determination to bring down this empire grew stronger. When? She asked quietly. 7 years ago. They told his wife it was a heart attack. They're very convincing, the Montecorvo family. Very good at making inconvenient truths disappear. Benedetto met her eyes. That's why I agreed to help you. Not for immunity. Not even for survival. For him. For Giuseppe. For every person they've buried beneath their money and their power and their endless cruelty. The FBI appreciates— Don't. He held up a hand. I'm not doing this for the FBI. I'm doing this for my brother. And I'm doing this because you— he pointed at her— are the only person in 5 years who has managed to get this close without being made. You're different from the others they've sent. Smarter. More patient. More invisible. I've had practice being invisible. I know. I read your file. Your grandmother. What they did to her. He shook his head. We are both ghosts seeking revenge, you and I. That's why I trust you. Because I know you won't stop until this is finished. Just as I won't stop. They spent the next hour reviewing the operation. Benedetto had access to everything. Financial records, shipping manifests, names and locations, and the intricate web of corruption that protected the Montecorvo empire from prosecution. He had been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right moment, the right partner. The Venetian Gala, Solène said. I heard them mention it tonight. What is it? Benedetto's expression darkened. The annual meeting. Every January, Raffaello hosts a masquerade ball at his estate. The entire organization attends. Captains, underbosses, associates. Even the politicians and judges on his payroll. Everyone who matters in his world, in one place, at one time. That's our window. That's your only window, he corrected. For one night, his guard is down. His arrogance is at its peak. He shows off, makes speeches, treats himself like a king receiving tribute. It's also the night he conducts the most sensitive business, the deals that can never appear in any record. Solène's mind raced with possibilities. A single night. Every target in one location. If they could get recording devices inside, if they could capture the right conversations. I can get you in, Benedetto continued, as serving staff. The family hires extra help for the event. People they don't know, don't investigate too closely. You'd be invisible, just like always. And you? I'll be at his side, as I am every year. But this time, I'll be steering conversations, guiding him toward admissions, making sure he says the things that will bury him. Benedetto's smile was cold as a winter grave. He trusts me completely, you know. 40 years of service, 40 years of pretending to believe in him. He has no idea that I've spent every one of those years praying for this moment. The plan was audacious. The plan was dangerous. The plan was exactly what Solène had been working toward for 18 months. There's something else, Benedetto said. Something I didn't include in my previous reports. Something I was saving until I was certain you could handle it. Tell me. He pulled a photograph from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. The image showed a young woman, perhaps 16 or 17, with dark skin and frightened eyes. She was beautiful, even through the fear, with features that reminded Solène painfully of her own reflection. Her name is Aaliyah, Benedetto said quietly. She was taken 8 months ago from a group home in Philadelphia. She's one of 6 girls currently being held at a property in New Jersey. waiting to be sold at the gala's underground auction. Solène's hands trembled as she held the photograph. An auction. Human beings sold like property to the highest bidder. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Don't let hate make you hard. Why didn't you report this immediately? Because if I had, you would have moved too soon. The FBI would have raided the property, saved those girls, and then Raffaello would have disappeared. He would have dismantled his organization, eliminated anyone who could testify, and rebuilt somewhere else. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there would be new girls, new victims, new auctions. Benedetto's voice was heavy with the weight of impossible choices. The only way to stop this permanently is to take down the entire operation, everyone involved, from top to bottom. Those girls are suffering right now. Every day we wait. I know. His eyes glistened. Do you think I sleep at night? Do you think I don't hear their screams in my dreams? But this is war, Agent Baptiste. And in war, sometimes we must make sacrifices that haunt us forever in order to win victories that save countless others. Solène stared at the photograph, at Aaliyah's frightened face, and felt something shift inside her. For 18 months, this mission had been about justice for her grandmother, about revenge, about making Raffaello Montecorvo pay for what his family had done. But now, it was about more than that. Now it was about Aaliyah and the 5 other girls waiting in terror. About every future victim who would never exist if they succeeded. About breaking the cycle of cruelty that men like Raffaello perpetuated because no one had ever stopped them. The gala is in 2 weeks, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Yes? Then we move in 2 weeks. Everything we have, recordings, documents, testimonies, all of it comes together on that night. We get the evidence we need, and then the FBI moves in force. Everyone goes down. Everyone. Benedetto nodded slowly. And the girls? Agent Vance has a tactical team on standby. The moment we have confirmation of their location, the moment the raid on the gala begins, they hit the New Jersey property simultaneously. No one escapes. No one gets left behind. For the first time since she'd met him, Benedetto Falcone smiled. A real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. Your grandmother would be proud of you, Solène Baptiste. The words struck her like a physical blow. She blinked rapidly, fighting the sudden surge of emotion that threatened to crack her composure. I hope so, she whispered. I hope wherever she is, she's watching. And I hope she knows that everything, every lie I've told, every mask I've worn, every piece of myself I've sacrificed, it was all for her, for the promise I made. She tucked the photograph of Aaliyah into her jacket pocket, close to her heart. In 2 weeks, this would all be over. In 2 weeks, Raffaello Montecorvo would learn what happened when you spent your life underestimating the people you called ugly, worthless, nothing. In 2 weeks, the invisible woman would make herself seen, and the world would never forget her name. The days that followed moved with the terrible slowness of a countdown clock. Each hour brought Solène closer to the gala, closer to the moment everything would change. She continued her work at Cassano's, continued playing the role of the forgettable waitress, continued absorbing every scrap of information that flowed through the restaurant's elegant rooms. Raffaello seemed to have forgotten about her entirely. The night he had called her ugly was just another evening to him, one insult among thousands, one display of power indistinguishable from all the others. He didn't notice her refilling his wine glass, didn't notice her lingering near his table during important conversations, didn't notice the small, careful smile that crossed her face whenever he said something incriminating. She reported everything to Agent Vance. The Thursday shipment, which resulted in a quiet interception that netted $40 million in heroin. The customs contact, who was now cooperating in exchange for protection. The Moreno connection, which led to 3 additional arrests in Puerto Rico. Each thread pulled tightened the net around the Montecorvo empire, though Raffaello remained blissfully unaware. But as the gala approached, Solène found her mind wandering to places she couldn't afford to go. She thought about Zeke, about his words in the coffee shop, about the future she had never allowed herself to imagine. She thought about her grandmother, about that small apartment in New Orleans, about the roses that had been watered with love and stained with blood. She thought about Aaliyah, about the fear in those young eyes, about the horror of waiting to be sold like livestock. And she thought about herself, who she was, who she had become, who she would be when all of this was over. Agent Thalia Vance called her the night before the gala, her voice tighter than usual. "We have a problem." Solène's grip on the phone tightened. "What kind of problem?" "There's a leak. Someone in the organization knows we're coming." The words hit like ice water. A leak. After 18 months of perfect operation, of meticulous secrecy, of sacrificing everything for this one chance, a leak. "How do you know?" Benedetto received a message this afternoon. Anonymous, untraceable. It said, "The Waitress is FBI. Run while you can." Solène's heart stopped, then started again, racing. "Benedetto!" He didn't run. He burned the message and contacted us immediately. He's still committed. But if whoever sent this knows about you, they might know about him too. The entire operation could be compromised. Solène forced herself to breathe, to think, to analyze. Who has access to my cover? Who outside our team knows my identity? No one. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The leak isn't from our side. Then how? We don't know. But we have 2 options. We can abort the operation, pull you out tonight, and try to rebuild somewhere else. Or we can proceed with the gala and hope that whoever sent that message is acting alone and hasn't shared the information. Abort. Pull out. Start over. The words felt like failure, like defeat, like watching her grandmother die all over again while the people responsible walked free. "No," Solène said. "We proceed." "Solène, if you walk into that gala and they know who you are, then they know. But we're too close to stop now. Too many lives are at stake. Aaliyah and those other girls are counting on us. Every future victim is counting on us. We don't get second chances, Vance. This is it. This is the moment." A long pause. Then, "You'll have backup. Tactical teams positioned around the perimeter. If anything goes wrong, you say the word and we move in." And the element of surprise? We might lose some of the evidence. Some of the targets might escape. But we will not lose you. Do you understand me, Solène? If this goes sideways, you are the priority. Solène smiled, though there was no one there to see it. "With all due respect, ma'am, I am not the priority. Justice is the priority. Those girls are the priority. Making sure Raffaello Montecorvo never hurts anyone again is the priority. I'm just the instrument." She hung up before Agent Vance could argue and spent the rest of the night preparing, checking her equipment, rehearsing her cover story, memorizing the layout of Montecorvo's estate from the blueprints Benedetto had provided. And somewhere in the small hours of the morning, she finally allowed herself to do something she hadn't done in years. She prayed. Not to any particular god or religion, but to her grandmother, to the universe, to whatever force governed fate and justice and the movements of human hearts. "Please," she whispered in the darkness, "let me be strong enough Let me be smart enough. Let me finish what I started. The gala was held at Montecorvo Estate, a sprawling property north of the city that had been built with blood money and maintained with fear. Solène arrived with the other serving staff, dressed in a simple black uniform, her identity hidden behind a white mask that all the servers wore. The irony was not lost on her. For 18 months, she had worn an invisible mask, the mask of the forgettable waitress, the dismissed nobody, the woman not worth seeing. Tonight, she wore an actual mask, and somehow felt more visible than ever. The ballroom was magnificent in its excess. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow shadows on marble floors. Men in tailored tuxedos mingled with women draped in jewels worth more than most people's homes. And in the center of it all, holding court like the emperor of a particularly elegant hell, stood Raffaello Montecorvo. He wore a red velvet mask that covered the upper half of his face, but his silver suit was unmistakable, as was the cruel curl of his lips. He moved through the crowd accepting tribute, handshakes, murmured congratulations, envelopes that disappeared into waiting hands. Everyone wanted something from him. Everyone owed him something. Solène watched from the edges of the room, distributing champagne, staying invisible. She caught Benedetto's eye once, received a subtle nod of acknowledgement, and continued her slow circuit of the ballroom. The recording device hidden in her mask was capturing everything: conversations, faces, the exchange of money and promises. But she needed more. She needed Raffaello himself speaking openly about his crimes, naming names and amounts and locations. She needed him to condemn himself with his own words. Her opportunity came an hour into the evening, when Raffaello retreated to his private study for a meeting with his inner circle. Benedetto was among them, as expected, and thanks to a carefully timed spilled drink and a whispered apology, so was Solène, assigned to clean the mess she had created while the powerful men pretended she didn't exist. There were 6 of them in the room: Raffaello, Benedetto, 3 underbosses whose faces she had memorized from surveillance photographs, and a man she didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, wearing the robes of a judge, Judge Harrison Webb. His name clicked into place from countless case files. He was the man who had dismissed 3 separate indictments against the Montecorvo family, the man whose verdicts had allowed murderers to walk free. "The auction proceeds are already deposited," Raffaello was saying as Solène dabbed at the carpet, her head bowed, her ears straining. 6 girls, as promised. The highest bidder paid $3 million for the eldest. Apparently, he has specific tastes. Laughter from the men. Solène's stomach turned. "What about the New Jersey property?" the judge asked. "Clean. Nothing ties us to it. By this time tomorrow, the girls will be distributed to their new owners, and the location will be scrubbed. No evidence, no witnesses." "And the other matter? The leak?" The room fell silent. Solène felt the air change, felt the attention in the room shift like a predator scenting prey. "The anonymous message," Benedetto said carefully. "The one claiming someone here is FBI. "I've had my people investigating," Raffaello replied. "If there's a rat, they'll find them. But tonight, we celebrate. Tonight, we remind ourselves why we do what we do. For power, for wealth, for the glory of the family." He raised his glass. "To 40 years of the Montecorvo legacy." And to 40 more. They drank. Solène continued cleaning. And then Raffaello's gaze fell on her, and something changed in his expression. Something that made her blood run cold. "You," he said slowly. "Stand up. Solène rose, keeping her eyes downcast, her body language submissive. Take off your mask. The room watched in silence. Benedetto's face was carefully neutral, but Solène caught the tension in his shoulders, the subtle positioning of his hand near his jacket. Sir, the staff is required to wear. I said take it off. She had no choice. Fighting would only confirm suspicions, only accelerate the inevitable. With steady hands, she reached up and removed the white mask. Raffaello's eyes widened with recognition. Then his face split into a cruel smile. Well, well, the ugly waitress. I thought you looked familiar, even behind that mask. Something about the way you move. Too smooth, too controlled, like someone who's trained to be invisible. He stepped closer, invading her space, his wine-scented breath washing over her face. Tell me, sweetheart, did they think I wouldn't notice? Did they think I'm stupid? Solène maintained her composure, even as her mind raced through contingency plans. I don't understand, sir. Of course you don't. He laughed, and the sound was sharp as broken glass. Because you're just a waitress, right? Just a poor, insignificant, ugly little nobody serving champagne at a party she doesn't belong at. He reached into his jacket and produced a photograph. Solène's photograph, the one from her FBI file, the one that should have been classified, should have been impossible to obtain. Solène Baptiste, Raffaello read from behind the image. Federal Bureau of Investigation, undercover operative, assigned to bring down my organization. He tucked the photograph away and drew a gun from his waistband. You know, Agent Baptiste, I should thank you. You've made me feel something I haven't felt in years. Genuine surprise. The gun pointed at Solène's heart was chrome-plated, elegant. The kind of weapon a man like Raffaello would choose for appearances rather than function. But it would still kill her just as dead as any other. Before I end your insignificant life, Raffaello said casually, I have questions. Who else knows about tonight? How much does the FBI have? And most importantly, he leaned closer, his eyes bright with malicious curiosity. Did you really think you could win? Solène met his gaze without flinching. Fear was there, yes. She would be a fool not to feel it. But beneath the fear was something else, something stronger. You still don't see it, do you? She said quietly. See what? You're so focused on looking down at people, you never look around. Never notice who's actually in the room with you. Never consider that the people you dismiss might have been dismissing you right back. Raffaello's smile faltered. What are you, Benedetto? The single word cut through the room like a blade. Raffaello turned just as his most trusted advisor drew his weapon, not pointing at Solène, but at his boss. At the man he had served for 40 years. At the man who had murdered his brother. What is this? Raffaello's voice cracked, genuine confusion replacing his usual arrogance. This is the end, Raffaello. Benedetto's voice was steady, cold, final. This is Giuseppe's justice. This is for every innocent person you've hurt, every life you've destroyed, every family you've shattered, including mine. The other men in the room reached for their weapons, but they were too slow. The door burst open, and tactical agents poured through. Black uniforms, raised rifles, the overwhelming force of prepared professionals. Within seconds, every person in the study was disarmed, restrained, their protests drowned by the chaos. All except Raffaello, who stood frozen, the chrome-plated gun still pointed at empty air. You think this changes anything? he spat at Solène as agents forced him to his knees. "You think taking me down ends this? There are 100 men ready to take my place, 1,000. You can't stop what we've built. You can't—" "The girls," Solène interrupted. "Where are they? The auction was supposed to happen tonight, but the money was already deposited. Where are they now?" "You think I'll tell you?" Raffaello laughed. "Die wondering, Agent Baptiste. Die knowing you failed them." Solène stepped forward, her face inches from his, and spoke the words she had been waiting 18 months to say. "I already know where they are. I just wanted you to confirm it for the recording." She tapped the device in her collar, still active, still capturing. "Benedetto gave us the New Jersey address 3 weeks ago. Our teams hit the property 4 minutes ago. As we speak, those girls are being rescued. As we speak, your buyers are being arrested. As we speak, every name in your organization is being added to indictment lists in 12 different jurisdictions." She watched the color drain from Raffaello's face, watched the arrogance crumble into something like fear, watched him finally, understand what it felt like to be powerless. "But that's not the best part," she continued, allowing herself a small smile. "The best part is that you have no idea who exposed you. You have no idea where the leak came from. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering how someone like me, an ugly little nobody, wasn't that what you called me, managed to destroy everything you built." She pulled the $100 bill from her pocket, the one he had thrown at her feet that night in the restaurant, stained with wine and folded with care, and pressed it into his restrained hands. "For your trouble," she said. "Buy yourself a new future. Oh wait, you can't, because you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell, surrounded by people who know exactly what you did. And men like you, they don't do well in prison." Raffaello Montecorvo was dragged away screaming threats and promises of revenge. But his words were empty now. The power that had made him terrifying was gone, stripped away by a woman he had dismissed as worthless, betrayed by a man he had trusted completely. Agent Vance appeared at Solène's side, her expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "It's over. We got them. All of them." "The girls?" "Safe. Scared and traumatized, but safe. Aaliyah is asking for you. Apparently Benedetto told her you were the one who saved them." Solène nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. For 18 months, she had lived in shadow, sacrificed everything, become someone she barely recognized. And now, in a single night, it was all worth it. "There's something else," Vance said hesitantly. "We found records at the estate, financial records. One of the entries matched a payment made to a private security firm 7 years ago, a firm that specialized in eliminations." "My grandmother." "We can't prove it directly, but with Benedetto's testimony and the records we've recovered, we have a strong circumstantial case. Enough to add it to the federal charges. Enough to make sure it's part of the official record." Solène closed her eyes, and for a moment, she was back in that hospital room, holding her grandmother's hand, making a promise she never thought she'd be able to keep. Show them who you are. She had. She finally, truly had. 3 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Solène Baptiste stood before a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., and watched as Raffaello Montecorvo was led inside in chains. The cameras flashed. The reporters shouted questions. The world watched as one of the most powerful, organized crime figures in American history was brought to justice. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Solène testified for 3 days, recounting every moment of her 18-month operation with the calm precision of someone who had rehearsed truth until it became second nature. She described the humiliation in the restaurant, the months of careful surveillance, the night of the gala. She named names and dates and amounts that made the courtroom gasp. And when the defense attorney tried to discredit her, questioning her motives, her methods, her personal vendetta, she looked him directly in the eye and said, "Yes, this was personal. My grandmother was murdered by this organization. But personal doesn't mean unprofessional. Personal means I had every reason to cut corners, to act impulsively, to let my emotions guide me. And I didn't. I spent 18 months building a case that would be unimpeachable. 18 months of discipline and sacrifice and living a lie so that the truth could finally come out. If that's what personal looks like, then I hope every agent who comes after me is exactly as personal as I was." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They returned with guilty verdicts on all 57 counts. Raffaello Montecorvo was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Judge Harrison Webb received 25 years for corruption and conspiracy. The other members of the organization were scattered across federal prisons nationwide, their empire dismantled, their legacy reduced to cautionary tales. And the 6 girls from the New Jersey property, Aaliyah and the others, were returned to their families or placed in safe, loving homes. Aaliyah herself sent Solène a letter that arrived on the day of the sentencing. "Dear Agent Baptiste, I don't know how to thank you. Words aren't enough. But I want you to know that because of you, I have a future. I'm going back to school. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm learning to sleep through the night again. They told me what he called you, that man who hurt so many people. They told me he called you ugly, and I just want you to know, you're the most beautiful person I've ever met. Not because of how you look, but because of what you did. Because you saw me, really saw me, when no one else did. Thank you for being visible when it mattered. Love, Aaliyah." Solène kept the letter in her desk drawer, where she could read it whenever the weight of her work became too heavy. Agent Vance offered her a promotion, supervisory role, corner office, no more undercover work. She turned it down. "I'm not finished," she explained. "There are other Raffaellos out there. Other invisible victims waiting to be seen. I'm not ready to sit behind a desk while someone else does the hard work." Vance nodded, unsurprised. "I thought you'd say that. But take a vacation first, at least. You've earned it." A vacation. The concept felt foreign, almost absurd. For 18 months, Solène hadn't had a single day that wasn't focused on the mission. No rest, no relaxation, no moment where she wasn't performing for an audience of enemies. She flew to New Orleans first, visited her grandmother's grave in the quiet cemetery, where jazz musicians played on Sunday afternoons, and flowers grew wild between the headstones. She sat on the grass and talked to Marguerite for an hour, telling her everything: the operation, the trial, the victory that had felt so long in coming. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I showed them who I am. And I never let them take my softness, Grandma. I never let hate make me hard. I used it, turned it into something that could help people instead of hurt them." She touched the weathered stone with gentle fingers. "I hope you're proud. I hope you're at peace. And I hope you know that I love you, always." A warm breeze rustled through the cemetery, carrying the scent of roses and possibility. Solène smiled, closed her eyes, and let herself feel, really feel, for the first time in years. When she opened them again, Ezekiel Hartwell was standing at the cemetery gate. He looked thinner than she remembered, worry lines etched around his eyes, his suit rumpled like he'd thrown it on without looking. But his smile, that warm, genuine, transformative smile, was exactly the same. "You found me," she said. I've been looking for 3 months. He walked toward her, stopping a few feet away as if unsure of his welcome. Your boss finally told me where you were. Figured you might want to see a familiar face. A familiar face? She laughed softly. You don't know the half of it. The things I haven't told you. I watched the trial. Every day. Every testimony. I know everything now. He took another step closer. And I'm still here. I'm still in love with you. The real you. The one who did impossible things for the right reasons. I lied to you. For months. I made you care about someone who wasn't... Wasn't what? Wasn't the strongest, bravest, most extraordinary woman I've ever met? Zeke closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. Solène, you didn't lie about who you are. You just edited the details. The person I fell in love with, her kindness, her determination, her light, that was all real. The rest was just noise. She wanted to insist that the relationship was built on falsehood, that he deserved someone simpler, someone who didn't carry the weight of so much pain and so much purpose. But looking into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. She saw a future. I'm not taking the promotion, she said. I'm going back to the field. There are more people out there who need help, and I can't walk away from that. I know. It's going to be complicated, dangerous. I'll have to disappear again sometimes, maybe for months at a time. I know that too. And you're still here? Zeke smiled, that transformative smile that had first made her forget, just for a moment, who she was pretending to be. I told you once that I love you. That hasn't changed. It won't ever change. And if being with you means waiting, worrying, trusting you to come back, then that's what I'll do, for as long as it takes. Solène Baptiste had spent her entire career becoming invisible, hiding in plain sight, disappearing into roles that weren't her own. But standing in that cemetery, with her grandmother's memory watching over her and the man she loved holding her hands, she finally allowed herself to be seen. Fully, completely, beautifully seen. She kissed him there among the headstones and the roses, and somewhere in the warm New Orleans breeze, she could have sworn she heard her grandmother laughing. 1 year later, Solène testified before Congress about the need for expanded human trafficking prevention measures. Her testimony was instrumental in passing legislation that would protect thousands of future victims. When the media asked how it felt to be called a hero, she smiled and shook her head. I'm not a hero, she said. I'm just someone who refused to be invisible, someone who was told she was nothing and decided to become something instead. Every single person watching has that power. Every single one of you can look at the people the world dismisses, the overlooked, the underestimated, the ones called ugly or worthless, and choose to see their value. That's where change starts. Not with laws or investigations, but with seeing each other clearly. She thought about Raffaello Montecorvo, rotting in his prison cell, surrounded by men who knew what he had done to women and children. She thought about Aaliyah, now in her first year of community college, studying to become a social worker. She thought about Benedetto Falcone, serving a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation, writing a memoir that would expose even more of the family's secrets. And she thought about her grandmother, who had planted roses in defiance of a cruel world, who had told her granddaughter she was beautiful when everyone else tried to make her feel small. Show them who you are. She had, and she would keep showing them for as long as it took until no one was invisible anymore. That night, Solène and Zeke walked along the banks of the Mississippi, watching the city lights dance on the water. She wore a simple dress and no mask, her face open to the sky, her heart open to the future. "You know what I realized?" she said, leaning into his embrace. "What's that?" "He tried to make me feel ugly, tried to convince me I was nothing. And for 18 months, I had to let him believe he'd succeeded." She smiled, and the smile reached all the way to her eyes. But the joke was on him the whole time. Because the moment he looked at me and saw nothing worth fearing, he sealed his own fate. My invisibility was his blindness, and that blindness destroyed everything he built. Zeke kissed the top of her head. "Remind me never to underestimate you." "As if you could," she laughed, and the sound carried across the water like a promise. "I'm a woman who took down an empire with patience and a wine glass. Underestimating me is impossible now." They walked until the stars came out, until the city slept and the river sang its ancient song. And when Solène Baptiste finally closed her eyes that night, she didn't dream of revenge or pain or the long years of hiding. She dreamed of roses, of her grandmother's smile, of a future where no one was ever called ugly or worthless or nothing again. And in the morning, she woke up ready to keep building that future, one invisible victory at a time. What you just witnessed was the story of a woman who turned humiliation into power, invisibility into strength, and cruelty into justice. But remember, this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that the people the world dismisses are often the most dangerous. They're the ones watching, waiting, preparing. Solène's grandmother told her that real beauty is in the spirit, in the fight, in refusing to bow to small men with loud voices. Maybe there's someone in your life who needs to hear that today. Maybe that someone is you. If this story moved you, if it made you think about who the world overlooks and why, share it with someone who needs to remember their own power. And never forget, the moment someone calls you nothing is the moment they've already lost. They just don't know it yet.